On this episode of Narcissist Apocalypse, we talk with an abuse survivor named Montana. And Montana was in a relationship with a cheating narcissist. It's a story of being sold a future with a partner that always had one foot out the door. Welcome to Narcissist Apocalypse, a podcast that gives a voice to survivors of narcissistic abuse. I am Brandon Chadwick, but my friends call me Chad, and thanks for tuning in to this episode. So what is a narcissist, you may ask? Well, for the purposes of this podcast, we refer to a narcissist as anyone who has displayed a pattern of behavior that shows a limited capacity to appreciate others' perspectives. It is that simple. And now, before we get to our episode with Montana, I just want to first thank everyone in the Narcissist Apocalypse community for listening to the show and sharing your thoughts by email, Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. Also, a reminder, if you have not left us a review on whatever podcast service you use, Spotify, Apple, Google, Stitcher, CastBox, etc., please leave us a 5-star written review as it helps out the show when it comes to rankings. Now, if you haven't been to our website recently, please do go there if you want to be part of our show. Go to narcissistapocalypse.com. At the top of the page, it says guest form. Click on that button, fill out the form, and we will go from there. If you have not received an email from me, please do go check your junk mail. And because I'm pretty much caught up on all my emails, so please check your junk mail, and I'll probably be in your junk mail box, and we will go from there. So go to narcissistapocalypse.com. Top of the page, click guest form, send me your email, and we'll go from there. And what else do I have on my list here today? Also at our website, narcissistapocalypse.com/courses. Yes, we are offering high-conflict parenting courses that can be found at narcissistapocalypse.com/courses. We have partnered with an online parenting company called Online Parenting, and many of the courses we are offering were created by Bill Eddy. And if you've listened to our episode last year with a divorce lawyer named Helen, you'll know that Bill Eddy is an expert in dealing with these individuals in court, and he's now helped create many parenting courses to help you through divorce and to help support your children too. These courses are the most widely recognized courses by family courts across the country. So if you want to support the show and are looking for guidance, please do go to narcissistapocalypse.com/courses. And what else do I have on my list here today? Oh, we have a Patreon. Yes. If you want to hear episodes that never made it to air, follow-up episodes with former guests, and much, much more. Melissa and I have a lot of conversations on that show. We do reviews. We've reviewed some Soprano stuff. We reviewed Fiona Apple. We talk about a lot of stuff. We even talked about Degrassi Junior High. Because there was an episode on Degrassi Junior High when I was young that had to do with physical abuse, emotional abuse, which was a great episode. Anyway, if you want to support the show, come to our Patreon. Be a patron of our Patreon at patreon.com/narcissistapocalypse. And last thing before we go to our show, I created a new Instagram channel last week. Oh, I debuted it. I've been working on it. And you can go to Instagram, and our new channel is called Chums. It's a friend spoof using a friend's Lego set. So you can find it on Instagram at the hashtag, or not the hashtag, but the actual channel is called This Week on Chums, and Chums is spelled CHUMS. And we've renamed all the characters. We've given them a myriad of mental health problems, including the character named Boss, who is a covert narcissist, and he is just the worst, everyone. He is the worst. It took me about 6 hours just to build the Lego set itself, so please do go there and follow the channel. It is called This Week on Chums. It's on Instagram. Please follow us. And now, enough about me and my channels on Instagram. It's time for me to get it out of my way, your way. Here is my conversation with Montana. Welcome to Narcissist Apocalypse, everyone. With me today. I have Montana. How are you, Montana?
I'm good. How about you?
I am good. So I'm not going to do any bit of rambling. I'm just going to get out of my way and your way. The floor, Montana, is now yours.
Oh, thank you. I don't know where to begin. So it looks like with my ex-narcissist, it looks like we met in 2015 when I started my new job. And it looks like I was a frontline associate, and he was actually my lead. So I know when I first met him, I really didn't want to, have any type of involvement with him, but he seemed like the typical nice person that, everyone at work was like, oh, this guy is so great, and, he dresses well, and, he has a son that he's always talking about. So I guess that kind of captured my interest at first. And then it looked like fast forward, actually when I started my position, I got promoted to a lead position like his. So I thought in my head, oh, maybe this is, a good way to actually personally know him a little bit more. Because there was just something that drove me to knowing about him. And so from there, he pretty much asked me, now that we're in the same position, we should probably exchange numbers. And I was like, oh, sure. So we exchanged numbers. And I remember, for like 8 months, it was just pretty much just texting back and forth about each other's days and so on. But I found it odd. I remember after that, he kept telling me, so I'm kind of getting bored with my position, and I think I need to kind of step down of my leadership role. And I'm like, well, I guess if there's something you want to do in the future, I think that may be a good idea. And I probably should have taken that as a red flag, because he's like, yeah, I do get bored from my positions quite often. So remember, he ended up transferring to another department, and we kind of lost touch from there. And then all of a sudden, I know I did find out he was talking to someone else at work, and one of my friends said, yeah, it looks like he just asked for her number one day, and, basically they're talking, but I know she doesn't really like him. So when I found out, I was texting him, and I said, oh, so, word is that you're speaking to so-and-so, and he's like, well, yeah, she's just a friend, like you, but, she's just good company and good to talk to. So I kind of left him alone for a couple of months just because of that. And it looks like later down the road, he told me, yeah, you're so right. She was a complete waste of my time, and I really want to give us a chance to work out. And I said, okay, so, we started talking once again.
So during the initial talking phase with him, you were not just talking about work, you were talking about your personal lives, and was there, I guess, exchanges of romantic interest in that, or were you kind of friends during that period and really getting to know each other?
I think it was a little bit of both, which is why I felt really comfortable with him at first, is because we kind of had, I thought, that friendship level to talk about anything. And he would always compliment me at work, saying, oh, you look so pretty today. And, he would tell me about his future, that if he had, if he was involved with someone, he, would want to get married because he was cheated on in his previous marriage. And, of course, hearing that, you feel so sorry for the person. And I'm like, I'm so sorry. I can actually relate to that, too. And so, yeah, basically, telling me he wanted all these things in the future. He also told me, when I asked him, I said, is having a kid something that you would want in the future as well? Because I know he already had a son from his ex-wife. And he said, oh, absolutely, I would be open to, another kid. So I said, oh, okay, so this is probably someone that, I could build a future with. So, that's the only reason I kind of stayed around to keep talking to him, but absolutely.
And also within those initial conversations for 8 months, besides, I guess, having a shared future view, did you disclose other things about yourself where I guess he showed common interest or empathy towards that he would eventually kind of use against you? And with his own story, like what was his, I guess, upbringing? Did he bring up like his past besides his wife, where you guys bonded over certain things?
Yeah, I would say one of the main things was that, I kind of opened up to him that, I got married very early, and, it was just my high school sweetheart, and we ended up getting divorced, because he was very abusive physically, and he, was like, oh, I'm so sorry to hear that, even though I didn't go through that physically, I went through, my ex-wife cheating on me, and he just went into details as to, it's someone he was with for a very long time, and, he never got the closure he needed from it, and, he's just trying to be that type of person to where he cannot look at all women that same way, and I said, I'm the same way with men in general, so, I'm hoping in the future I can find someone that won't make me feel like that, and, that's a really good person. So I think that's kind of like where the love bombing kind of started, like, oh, I would never do that to you, and, I'm the type of person that I like to secure a future, and I see this as like a good path for us because we just have so much in common. I even opened up to him about my parents, because his aren't divorced, mine are. But my dad was also a narcissist, and, I told him just a lot of things that I had to go through with him, growing up and, constantly being in a different relationship every couple of months, and me and my sister being dragged into that and kind of confused as to what happened to the previous person. So, and he told me, yeah, I can never be like that. So I guess those are very personal things I shared with him at the time. So
at this point, even though you're not even in a romantic relationship and you are just really good friends sharing intimate details, you're pretty much sold on him as far as sharing your values, feeling like you're seen and heard, and being able to see a future together and wanting a future together. Like that's kind of, even though you're not together, that's kind of what's already been sold to you. Would you say that's fair?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. At that point, definitely. I thought, from there, because of as much as we've shared together and, this is something I can really, if things worked out, he'd be the type of person I can come home to and just, share any type of bad day I was having, and he would just be there to listen to me, and that's how he made me feel at the time. Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
So after you confronted him about the person he was talking to or texting with, what happened after that?
So yeah, basically, because he kept telling me, it's just a friendship thing and I want to see how it goes. And, I said, okay, I'm a little confused, but, if that's what you want to do, like, I'm all supporting you in your happiness. And he said, but, that doesn't mean we still don't have to talk. And I said, well, I'm the type of person that, especially that, like, if you need to reach out to me, please do, but I'm not going to, like, linger around and, chase you, because I'm definitely not that type of person. And he said he understood. So, kind of from there, I would say we went without texting for at least 2 months until he kind of ran into me one day in one of our break rooms and was asking how I'm doing and, trying to catch up with my life and, kind of like starting all over again in a sense. So I asked him, I said, how did it turn out with her? And he's like, yeah, just, it wasn't working out. Like, I found out she was trying to talk to someone else. And, I gave this girl something for Christmas. And it's funny because I remember I had access to, me and her were friends on Instagram and Facebook, and I saw that one day, and I saw the note that he gave her, and it was just so forthcoming on his feelings, saying, oh, so-and-so, like, I have all these feelings, and I didn't think I could feel again, and, you've changed my life for the better, and, Merry Christmas to you and your family. And I remember seeing that, and I'm like, what the hell? Like, you've just known this person for a couple of months, and you're kind of like already saying how much they've changed your life in such a short amount of time. It just didn't make any sense to me. And I was like so confused at that point.
Did you feel when he put that on that, you thought maybe you were going down that path yourself, and did you feel not ill, that's a bad word. Did you feel upset that at that point that you guys were hitting it off and then it kind of disappeared and he had moved on? Did you see that as a possible pattern yet?
It's funny because it was just like a so-in-the-moment feeling that I was like, maybe I should have taken this as a sign, but I'm like, he's a single guy, maybe he's just trying to see who's a better fit. So I was really trying not to take it personal upon myself, like, why was it that he ended up talking more to this person than me? And I probably should have at the time, but I was like, if I do act that way, maybe things will never work out again. So I kind of just kept to myself about my feelings. But yeah, I remember for like a week, I was just like, what the hell? Like, trying to think of all these scenarios as to how he, because even though we were still friends, I was like, well, he could have at least told me Merry Christmas or like gotten me something, even if it's a card, but nothing. But yeah, I just found that so weird. And it looks like he even tried leaving her a couple of like wink face notes on her desk. And I was just like, yeah, this is just kind of weird and creepy at the same time. I don't know, but never thought anything of it at the time.
So you said something, which is you kept to yourself about your feelings. Before this relationship started, when it comes to voicing your opinion or feelings, did you ever have trouble with that? Were your needs like throughout life met, and did you have trouble voicing your opinion and it being shut down, or was that something you had an issue with at the time, or no?
At the time, it's funny because he kind of understood how I felt, but I can tell you later as things progressed, I was constantly undermined as to why I'm feeling a certain way, and, that I'm going to the extreme. I'm not listening to what he's saying, that I'm insecure about how I feel. But yeah, at the time, he kind of was open and listened and was like, I'm sorry you feel that way. I'll do a better job at changing that. So two completely different people. Yeah.
So, I railroaded you there. So I think we were at, I guess after the messages.
Oh, okay, absolutely. Yeah.
Sorry, I screwed up there. I apologize.
It's okay. Yeah, but no, so the messages, no, he was, he was pretty understanding of, I opened up to him a little bit about how I felt about the situation, that I was kind of, someone was picked over me type thing, but that it was just a talking/dating stage, so I shouldn't be like so on top of it, and if it didn't work, it didn't work. And he's like, no, I understand, but, I want to keep working at this because, we just have so much in common and I don't want to lose you, is what he told me at the time. So it looks like from there, we became official, like, right around October of 2017. And that's when I actually was living on my own. And that's kind of like where the arrangement started, where I'm like, oh, do you live at home, or, do you live by yourself? And he's like, no, I've been living with my parents for the past, like, 5 to 6 years because my dad has had all this surgery going on, and I want to be, the son that I'm supposed to be and help him and care for him. So I was like, oh, that's genuine. That's, cool. And he's like, plus, with my son, until I have some more secure grounds for him, like, I plan on just staying here with my parents. So I was like, oh, okay. Didn't really think anything much of it. So as I had my own place, I noticed he started coming over more and more throughout the week, and he would pretty much, eventually, he ended up kind of, I would say, like, speeding things up, and he's like, if you want, I can start staying with you, like, throughout the week, and then when I have my son on the weekends, I can just bring him back to my parents. So I was like, oh, okay, no harm in that, just to see how things would be, if we were to actually live together. And so it was funny because I remember this situation kind of clearly where I didn't have internet service for a day, and he had his gaming computer, which, I'm like, oh, typical guy that likes gaming on his computer and plays PlayStation and all that stuff. And, I'm like a part of a guy's everyday life. So he's like, yeah, we can watch something on Amazon Prime, and there's like this really good movie that came out, and we should watch it. So I'm like, oh, okay, cool. So I'm kind of like sitting with him on the couch, and he's opening up his computer, and he's like, oh, before that, he's like, since we're kind of talking about like our last coolest vacation, like I went to Brazil a couple of years back, and he's like, I think I still have some pictures from the trip. So as he's going into his pictures, I see all these porn shots that are just on there. And I remember, like, at that time, because I was next to him, I froze. I'm like, oh, my God, what the hell do I say? How do I react? Like, and I remember I was like, what the fuck is this? And he's like, oh, my God, I'm so sorry. Like, just his face just, like, panicked immediately. And he's like, it's not what it is. He's like, it's, during my single days, and I forgot I still had this in here. So it kind of ruined the whole night, and I was like, yeah, I just think you should go home and, just let me be for tonight. And I remember, again, him, calling and texting me and harassing, saying that, please don't believe what I saw, that, it was during his single days. And eventually he's like, yeah, and I deleted them for your security of knowing things. And I remember when I called him back that day, I'm like, well, so when was that dated, like, those shots and everything? And he's like, oh, no, because I already deleted it. Because in my head, I'm like, well, if it was recently, because things are timestamps. But so I never had the closure from that. So I was like, you know what, let me just move on from it, because, what guy doesn't? So I didn't think anything much of it at first either. But yeah, I thought that was kind of weird. And so years later, he was like, so, now that my son is more involved with you, because I eventually ended up meeting his son, he says we should move into something that, where he would have his own room. And I agreed to it. I said, yeah, absolutely. So my dad at the time had a rental house that, I was able to rent from, and all three of us moved in. And that's kind of when I started noticing just, like, weird patterns from him. Like, he, was pretty much playing with his computer all day, all night. He had a very bad drug problem, like with weed. He would just smoke, like, at all hours of the day, to the point of falling asleep. So, I would ask him a lot, it's kind of hard, you opening up to me on your feelings, like, what's going on, and, things like that. And he would always tell me just nothing that actually calms him down. And he's, smoked in the past, and, it's something that he thinks I would be comfortable with him around. And I said, okay, I mean, I guess, but I didn't really know about this prior, so I didn't criticize or anything like that. And, I just noticed more and more we stopped going out in public, and, he would want to just stay at home, and he would always say, just from the stress at work, I just want to, relax. So, pretty much we just ended up, other than like an anniversary or my birthday, we really didn't go out. My friends would always ask me, I want to meet this guy, and every time I would try to make plans, for them to meet, he was always like, I have a headache, or I'm not feeling well, or, I'm fat. I don't like the way I'm looking lately. So I would suggest, let's go bike riding. Like, we live in a nice area where you can actually take advantage of that. And it was always an excuse. I even think we had a gym membership open for like a year, and we only went once together because he would just never want to go. So yeah, I just started seeing like these really weird patterns. And then towards the end of living there, I remember one day him and I were on a lunch break, and because we would coordinate that a lot since we worked in different departments. And he said, I'm not feeling well today, and I could tell he was kind of crying. And I said, what's wrong? Is everything okay? Like, because I feel like there's something wrong with you. And he's like, well, I don't want you to think wrongly of the situation or that I have feelings for this person, but I just found out that my ex-wife is actually engaged to her fiance. And I was like, okay, so why are you crying? And he's like, well, just for the fact that my son is going to now have to call this new person like their stepdad. But, I don't know how to react to the situation. And I thought that was kind of weird, because I'm like, I can understand if you have feelings about that, but to be crying, I just, I didn't get it. And I remember, too, like, he would talk a lot about his ex, too, to me, like, especially when I kind of showed him, like, my tattoos or wanting to get a tattoo, he would, like, say, oh, yeah, my ex has that same type of tattoo, like, in the same area or something. So from there, I was kind of thinking, well, maybe, I don't know, he may still have feelings for his ex, but that's just my opinion.
So was he comparing you to her, even without the tattoos, in other ways as well?
Yeah, like, we would talk about events coming up, and I would say, yeah, like the Sunset Music Festival is coming up, and I'm probably going to go with one of my friends, since, he does, as I told him, he doesn't like to go out in public or like in large crowds. And he's like, oh yeah, my ex goes to that all the time, and I wouldn't be surprised if you see her there. And, she used to love going to that stuff too. And I'm like, okay. But yeah, he would mention her a lot in just different scenarios. And I just always had that in the back of my head. I'm like, I feel like he just still has some type of feelings for her. Like, it just doesn't make any sense.
And how are you being treated in this time? Are you being devalued in ways, or is everything at this point still kind of calm?
Things were still kind of calm. He didn't really act a certain way towards me. I just know when him and I just had concerns about the way he was feeling, it was like, picking teeth. I almost felt like he was just really, it was really hard for him to express his feelings. And I was kind of like, because he really had nothing to complain about at the time. So in my head, I said, I don't like, we usually don't get into those conversations unless it's something I see personally where he's just really quiet. But, and things that I felt I had to address or say, he was, still being supportive, telling me, oh, I'll try to change that or this and that. There are times where I would have conversations about his son if like something happened, and he was like, we're like trying to, co-parent. So, I'm always going to be able to work with you on that. So he never really changed at that part.
Okay.
At all. Yeah.
So, where I interrupted you again. So where were we?
About his act, being engaged.
Yes.
Yeah. So I kind of took it as, okay, I guess she's engaged, we'll see what happens, and didn't think anything much of it. So kind of fast forward, during that time when we were living together there, I remember another night, another episode of him crying. And, I was like, hey, you want to talk? I know there's something bothering you. And he was just very, 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 very quiet. And I said, let's talk. Please talk to me. And he pretty much said that his ex reached out, because of their son, that pretty much she'll be moving out of where she's living with her fiance because, they kind of threw in the towel and they broke up. So there's going to be different arrangements made for him to have his son that week. And he's like, yeah, so I just found out that they broke up and all this other stuff. And I really was like, okay, I'm sorry to hear about that. But more so, he says right after, with everything going on and just how I'm feeling lately with work too, I actually want to quit work tomorrow because I just can't handle the position, the stress, the anxiety is just killing me. And mind you, he had a work from home position. So I was like, so many people kill for a position like that. I don't see where much anxiety would come from. And I just thought something so weird of the situation. So I'm like, well, you can't quit without a backup plan. I support you in you wanting to have another job that maybe is not so stressful, but, you can't just quit. We're living together, paying things together. And he just made just a big deal of it. That's when I kind of just started seeing things change as far as the way he spoke to me. And he's like, well, why aren't you understanding what I'm telling you? I'm going to quit regardless tomorrow. And, you being a supportive partner, you need to be there for me. And so I remember we got just into a heated argument. And I know it was a night that we had his son, and his son was sleeping. And I said, well, if you're going to keep talking to me like that, you need to, get out. And, your son can stay with me tonight, and you can come pick him up tomorrow. But, you're not going to fucking talk to me like that. And he ended up literally leaving that night with his son. And he actually ended up staying with his sister for 3 months. So we technically were kind of broken up for 3 months because of that situation. And I remember at work, he put in his notice, quit. And in my head, I'm like, how can someone just do that knowing we have shared responsibilities? And, I was kind of struggling myself through those 3 months. And, and again, he was trying to talk, saying, maybe we could have taken the situation differently, but, he has to do what's in his best interest right now for his mental health. And I just still couldn't understand things. I said, mental health? You've been at that company for years. It's just a different position. I don't understand. So later on, within those 3 months, he kind of was getting, I guess, bored where he was staying at his sister's, and he ended up telling me, I don't know if there's a way for us to get back to where we were, but, in order to support my future career, that what I want to do as a nurse and yours, I think this is what we're going to have to do if we want to get back together. And I said, I understand, because if it's something you kind of want someone to succeed in, I don't see the harm in being there for that person. So I kind of said, as long as you have something that you're working, even if it's part-time, then yes, I'm fully supportive, but I'm not going to just support you and you're not working. And he said, that's fine. But what's funny is, months when I had inquired about that situation, it looks like he actually ended up moving out because he thought him and his ex were going to actually work out, from what I find out later on. So while we were broken up for those 3 months, he was trying to reach out to his ex, seeing if they can actually be together. And she, of course, denied him and said no. So I don't know if that was a main factor from knowing now the situation, but
so
it was just really funny.
In a way,
yeah.
He took the opportunity to leave your home to go to your sister's, in a way to have privacy to try and get this other relationship going. And then when that didn't work out, he came back.
Exactly.
So a question that I had, I had a weird noise there. A question that I had is, when you initially got together and he was at his parents' house, do you feel that coming to your place was a way for him to escape his parents' house and not because he really wanted to move in with you initially?
Absolutely. The more things now, I think that was kind of an opportunity to kind of say, oh, I can actually live with someone now, have them pay most of the things or not pay anything at all, kind of to test the waters. But definitely, especially since that word that he likes to use where he gets bored easily, I'm maybe he was just bored at home and he just, saw the opportunity for someone to be with or, take advantage of, I should say, and made that step to try moving in with me really fast. So
in a way, all the way up to this point is he's on really good behavior because he's got bored of a place, or maybe he wasn't getting along with his parents, and he needed a place to go. He's now with you. He's using you. And then he leaves again. He's getting bored, stays with his sister, tries to get to one place, doesn't get there, comes back to you. So him being on his best behavior, in a way, it seems like where he can just he's maneuvering. It's like he's looking for something better. So he's staying in a good space most of the time, behavior-wise, because he needs options. Is that a great way to put it?
Oh, absolutely. You nailed it. Yep.
Okay. So he is now back with you. And I apologize again for doing the railroading.
Oh, no, it's okay. Absolutely. So, so at this point, since we kind of, I wouldn't say an arrangement, but it's something that we both agreed upon to keep moving forward together. He's and another thing, I feel like this area, I want to, now that my ex-wife is broken up and she lives, the new place she got is in Newport Richey, I want to see if we can maybe live out there. And in my head, I'm that's a big adjustment for me because I've always, been born into a certain area of Tampa. So I said, well, that may be a good thing because it'll be far from work, but, I can make the adjustment. And, he's and I can even add you on my son's pickup list. So, you can pick him up from school, everything you really wanted to be involved in, with co-parenting, I'll make it happen for you because I love you so much. And, you're always willing to be there for me and help me. And, so I said, okay, it doesn't sound like there's any harm in anything. So we ended up moving into an apartment over out in that area. And things, went well for a couple months. And he didn't really, change anything. It was kind of still the same, smoking himself away type thing. And, but he ended up finding something part-time that he would always talk about, that he enjoyed doing better than the corporate life. And, it was pretty much valeting. And I said, okay, I guess, everyone's, to teach his own. But so he was okay there. That's what he was doing and working. And, but I still noticed the same pattern because I said to myself, you know, if I'm making all these sacrifices, I think it's time that, you know, you make me feel special. And I remember a couple of times he's like, well, how can I do that for you? And I said, well, I mean, you know, he's taking me out, like planning things. And he's like, well, you know, every time we try to plan something, like I just have a long day from work, but, you know, we'll plan something. So I think one day his idea of planning was just taking me to dinner and a movie. And I didn't complain about it. I was just like, okay, but, you know, I kind of expected more out of it. But I noticed, too, during that phase, he was just, like, very, like, we would talk just about our normal day, and all of a sudden he's like, oh, I can't wait to bang you later. So I would get those messages, like, every other day. So it's like he wanted sex, like, constantly. And I took it as a joke at first because I'm like, you know, I don't know how much someone can do in a week, but it's like he would always, you know, make those insinuations, and I just kind of took that the wrong way. I'm like, I mean, obviously, is it that you're not getting enough, or, you know, or is it just a problem you have? So I was just confused. I'm like, I don't see how someone can ask for that, like, so many times a day. It was just weird. But yeah, so I remember at that point, he had his computer open a lot more, and I think his son one day wanted to play a game, so he gave me the password. So, I don't know, I started getting these weird premonitions and stuff, so I was like, I'm not the type to snoop around only if I have to. So I remember I was able to log in to his computer, but I noticed, like, he may have either deleted a lot of stuff or I don't know what. So I'm like, I guess maybe the only thing I could find is, you know, his Google searches. So I went on his Google search, and a month prior to, you know, from the date that I was on there, he was looking up all these names through his Facebook, like actual friends. And I remember seeing, you know, one name in particular, and I'm like, oh, I think this is like one of his sister's friends or something that I think he said he may have talked to like a long time ago, but things just didn't work out. And in my head, I'm like, what the hell is he doing searching for her name? And I remember when I confronted him about it, it was like pretty random because we were talking about what we're going to do for the evening. And I said, you know, who's so-and-so? And he didn't reply. And so when he got home, I kind of got upset. I'm like, so who's this person? And he's like, well, why are you snooping around on my computer? And I said, because your laptop's open. I said, but again, who's this person? And he said, oh, that's just someone. He's like, I never searched any names. He's like, I don't go on Facebook. He's like, I haven't gone on in years. And I don't know who searched for that name. I'm like, well, I'm not stupid. Like, you have to be the one to search it, you know? And he's like, you know, so I felt like we weren't going anywhere because most of our arguments, he would circle it back to me. And I was always confused, like, how are we not going anywhere, you know? And he ended up just telling me, you know, I said, well, then swear, you know, that's not true. And he said he swore on his son that he never searched for that name or any other name. So I just left it at that, and, you know, it was crazy.
Did you, so you were being gaslit, and pretty much you stopped arguing because you just got tired. He tired you out.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I was just like, okay, I'll leave it at that, you know, just, I'm not going to even snoop around anymore because I feel like every time I do or find something out, he just circles it back to me and makes me feel so stupid for confronting him about it. Or he always had, you know, something to say to close the situation out and then just move on. So yeah, then around January of this year comes, and, you know, he's like, you know, for my son's 9th birthday, I want to go ahead and take to Colorado. At least I can enjoy it and my son can see snow. And I said, that's perfect. Like, we haven't had like an actual trip out of state, let's do it. So I remember at the time he's like, I can pay for the car rental, but, I don't know if I can pay for everything else. And I want to make it so special for my son. So I felt bad. And I'm like, well, obviously I make a lot more than him. I said, so, I could buy the tickets and take care of the hotel, but we tried to make the best of it. And he was like, oh, like, I can't believe, like, how wonderful you are. And, like, when we get back from the trip, like, I want to make it up to you in a very special way. And I'm like, in my head, oh, maybe this means, he'll get me, like, some type of promise ring or engagement ring or whatever the case may be. I just thought very positive from it. So then right around the week, or I should say that Saturday before flying out, I was feeling really, really, really sick at work. And I kind of told him, hey, like, my boobs feel like I had 1,000 knives, on them. And I'm just feeling really weird. Like, I'm really concerned. And he's like, yeah, you should definitely get that checked out. That's weird. And he's like, are you throwing up or anything? I said, no, I just get really dizzy throughout the day and this stabbing pain. So I remember I made a really quick appointment to a breast specialist, and they're like, yeah, we think it may be something else just based on your symptoms, but, we'll do some blood work. And literally that night he was like, so what did the doctor say? And they're like, nothing. They just have to come back with, some blood results. So the very next day, I remember calling the nurse's office, and I'm like, hey, I know I'm supposed to get my results back. Is there any update? And the receptionist is like, well, I think we do, but we have to have a nurse call you back. So I was already, like, hyped, and I was so anxious and nervous. So literally a nurse calls me back, like, I would say an hour later, and tells me, oh, just based on your results, it looks like you're pregnant. And I'm like, oh my goodness. Like, I remember my whole world just stopped for a minute. And she's like, have you told anyone? And I'm like, I honestly didn't think the symptoms I had were of pregnancy, but, I haven't told anyone. So in my head, I'm like, should I tell him in person? Should I text him? And I remember at work, I had to leave for the day because I couldn't think, straight with the news. And so I texted him. I said, hey, the results came back and I'm pregnant. And he didn't respond. And he, it took him a while. And I'm like so nervous looking at my phone. I'm like, what is he going to say? And he's like, oh, wow. He's like, that's, surprising news. And I said, yeah, I know. And he's like, well, do you want me to take the rest of the day off so we can talk at home? And I said, sure, that'd be a good idea because I already left for the day. So when we got home and we were just talking about it more, he's like, yeah, I don't know if this is something that we're ready for right now. Mm-hmm. And, I just want you to think about that. Like, I'm trying to pursue my dreams with school, and how am I going to pursue my dreams with this news? And I'm like, we could find other ways around it. Like, it's not the end of the world. Like, people do it all the time. They, go to school part-time. And he's like, well, I just want us to think about it. So I remember that night, his sister, because we really didn't visit her a lot, when I wanted to. And she said, hey, why don't we go to Cheddar's for the night? Like, just the three of us and the kids, or her kids. So I remember when we got there, in my head, I'm like, we haven't told anyone that I'm pregnant, so I don't want it slipping. And he said the same thing. He's like, let's not say anything to anyone right now until we figure it out. And I said, okay. So I remember when we were ordering, or they were ordering drinks, both of them got like an alcoholic drink. And in my head, I'm like, yeah, I probably shouldn't be drinking at this point with everything. And I remember he looked at me with like this face, and it's something I've never seen. And he says, why aren't you getting something? Like, why don't you, you should get your favorite, drink, or like a Stella or something. And I kind of gave him a dirty look, like saying, I'm pregnant. Like, why would I drink right now? And I just thought that was just so weird of him to imply that. So I remember on the way home, he was like, are you, like, what's wrong? Like, you're very quiet. And I kind of said, nothing's wrong. And he's like, well, tell me what's wrong. I said, I just didn't appreciate the statement you made at the table of pressuring me to drink because you know my situation right now. And he says, well, I don't see any harm in that if it's something we're not ready for. And I don't know why, I was like, wow, what an asshole. Like, this is something I would never expect someone to tell me. And it always just left a really bad taste in my mouth after that. But so days later, he had another conversation with me at home, and he's like, whatever you decide to do, I'm completely supportive of it. If you want to keep the baby, I will be here for you. It's just adjustments we have to make, and it was very selfish of me, initially with the thoughts that I had, so I'm very sorry. So at that point, I'm like, maybe he just came to his senses, obviously, like, something that I wanted him to realize. And, at that point, I thought things were going to go great. Like, he's being a supportive partner. Maybe he's not being as selfish as he has been with me. And, this is just something that was kind of like a miracle for it to happen to me. So, maybe he's just changed his way of thinking. And, so basically he went to my second appointment with me, and I remember observing him that day, like, when we had the sonogram, he was, crying and saying, he can't believe, like, what he's seeing, and that it's going to be a great experience. And, even the doctors, when they met him in the room, were like, oh, you have a great catch because he seems like he knows what he's doing. And he's like, yeah, I was married before, I have a son, so I know all about this. And, it was just, it was funny seeing that now, like, how everyone thought he was such a great person. So after that, I want to say it was closer towards the end of February. This was like after Valentine's Day. I remember him telling me he had a wedding to go to, and that it's his best friend's wedding, and he's invited me for months to go with him. And I told him at the time, I said, well, being that I'm pregnant now, I don't know how much I can do because I'm in my first trimester, like, to get my hair done and be around chemicals. And if I can't drink, like, I don't want to spoil it for you. And I said, but, if you want your son to go, like, have him go. He's like, oh, no. He's like, because I can't even afford, like, something nice for him to wear because I have to, rent my own suit because I'm in the groomsmen's party. And so he's like, well, maybe you guys can just stay and relax and hang out while I go to the wedding, and then, just call you guys and whatever. And I said, okay, that, I guess that's what we can do. I kind of thought, why wouldn't you bring your son to the wedding? And the weeks came closer to that wedding, and I noticed it wasn't weird. Like, he was just very excited going, and then he's like, oh, but, when I get back, babe, like, we'll do, like, a slow dance, like, you and me. Like, it's going to suck me not being able to dance with anyone, but, of course I'll call you and Andre, and we'll go from there, not to make you feel bad for being at home. So he did exactly that. Like, he, contacted me throughout the night, but I noticed he didn't come home till almost, like, 1 a.m. And that wedding started at 3, and then he kept telling me that how the wedding delayed and that, they had all these other things afterwards, and they did the farewells, so I didn't really think much of it. When he came home, though, he was happy to see us and everything like that. So then the next day, he goes, yeah, I want to be able to tell my parents about the news because, it's past your 13 weeks. Like, I wanted to make sure everything was okay and well. And I thought it was weird because I know from the times I've met his parents, they go to bed really early, And the time he was leaving to go, it was like at 8 o'clock at night. I'm like, okay. I said, well, why don't you take your son with you, because his grandparents. He says, oh, no, because their house is under construction right now, and I don't think it's a good idea. And I said, okay, but it's his grandparents. And he's like, well, I thought we were going to tell my son, like, in a different way, not in front of my parents. So, again, I didn't think anything of it. He went out, and same thing. I would, text him, say, how's everything going? What have your parents said? He would go without texting me for like 2 hours, and I thought, that's not like him, because every time he's at his parents' house, he'll reply right away. And he said, I'm just shooting the shit with my dad here, and, my mom and dad are so happy about the baby, and they said congrats, and he's like, I'm just sobering up before I head home. I love you. I'll talk to you later. And I don't know why at that time, like, I really had a ball feeling in my stomach, and I'm like, just something's not right. Like, all these signs, and, since I had his son with me at home, I'm like, I think the craziest thing if I did go was, his son questioning me, like, what are we doing, this late at night in a car? Or, I didn't want to be out to be the crazy person, but I just knew, also in my head, what if I showed up there and his car wasn't there? So, at the time when he came back home, I just went off on him, and I said, what is going on? Like, this is not like you. You usually do text me. I said, I have your son here with me. It's 1 a.m. This is kind of disrespectful to me, to at least tell me you're okay. And he's like, well, again, I don't, every time I'm with my family now, I want to make sure my attention is focused 100% on them. And, I don't want to have to constantly be texting someone. So that's how he made me feel, that he's not cheating, that I'm going crazy, that it's my pregnancy hormones, that, he also told me, you've just been, you can't even allow me to enjoy my life knowing that our life is going to change. Like, I can't go out with my friends without you asking me, like, how's everything going? And it just, at that point, that's when I think I started having the weird feelings of something else was going on, or he was living some type of double life. So then I noticed, like, the beginning of March is when he really changed his colors. Like, his kisses weren't the same, and, very short with me while he was at work, texting throughout the day, didn't call me sweetie or, the nicknames we would have for each other. And so that week, he was on the couch again, just how he is, like, pulling teeth. And I said, listen, I need to know what's going on between us. Like, I just feel like there's just something really wrong, and if you don't talk to me, I can't fix it. And he says, I'm just not happy with the baby situation anymore. And, at this point, I want to continue my life how I had it planned, going back to school. And, I want you to get an abortion. And I said, how are you going to tell me this kind of so late in my pregnancy? Like, we had everything figured out. He's like, well, you don't understand because you don't want to listen to me. Like, I've dealt with this before, and I've, dealt with caring, and it's expensive, and we're not ready. I'm not going to be happy mentally and all this stuff. And I remember our argument got so bad that I had to end up going to the hospital because I was bleeding. And luckily, everything was okay when I, left the hospital. And he called me a couple times harassing my phone, just asking where was I, because I had called his sister at the time to let her know what was going on. And apparently, he told his sister that I'm just looking for attention in going to the hospital. And I think kind of that's where the smear campaign started. And when she told me that, I was like, wow, I can't believe she would say something so severe like that when, I was bleeding, and he didn't care. He just called me once I called his sister to tell her about the truth of what was going on. And, I told her he's wanting me to have an abortion all of a sudden, and, look at the messages, for proof. And I sent them to her. She's like, oh my God, this is crazy. I can't believe he's acting like this with you. So I remember when I got home the day after, I said, so with everything going on now, is it going to still be like this? And he said, yeah, I think we just need to take some space for a week and figure things out. And I said, well, I guess I'll be going to some, my mom's or somewhere else, because I don't want to be in this type of environment, stressful environment. And, if I have to go to the hospital again, it's going to be bad. So I ended up moving with my mom, and we kept talking via text, a lot shorter, though, because I wanted to give him space and give myself space. And ultimately it came down to where he's like, well, I think we should just, break the lease because you don't want to get an abortion. And, maybe we can just figure things out later if we're living separately and go from there. So I remember we broke the lease together, and that month, technically, the rent was paid. So in my head, I said, well, would you like to stay there with your son because it's closer to his school, and, work will be closer to my mom's, and, there's no harm in that because I wasn't going to live up there by myself. And he said, sure, that's great. And I'll always remember this because, you're being supportive once again. And even though we're kind of, split, or we're not sure what we're going to do with each other. So then weeks go by, and I'm at my mom's, and I'm like, he's just been so quiet lately. Like, just something's weird. And I remember I did a Google search of his name because, he barely goes on Facebook or anything. But I'm like, there's just something telling me that if I Googled his name, something would come up. And I remember I Googled his name, and I saw a Pinterest account. And when I clicked on the Pinterest account, it's like his profile picture is of his son when he was a baby. So I'm like, maybe it's something I never saw before, or, I shouldn't consider because, it must be an old account. But as I'm scrolling down, I'm seeing these shared collaborations from like days ago. And that's when I'm like, oh my God, what am I seeing? And there was this girl collaborating wedding ring ideas, house ideas, and baby room ideas. And I remember my heart sank from that moment on. And I'm like, I think this is the person that I think he's cheating on me with. And I confronted him and texted him. I said, hey, I know this may sound weird, but like I was on Pinterest, and it kind of recommended me to certain people, and yours name came up, and this is what came up. And I said, who's this person? And he's like, oh wow, I haven't used Pinterest in like 9 years. He's like, I don't know who that person is. He's like, I think it's a fake account. I'm like, well, if it's a fake account, why are they sharing things with you? And he's like, I don't know. That's really weird. He's like, it could possibly be, someone crazy. Like, I've dealt with crazy in the past, like stalking. He's like, but I have no idea who that is. And I was like, okay. But again, like, you can't collaborate pictures together unless someone approves it. And he just stayed quiet. He's like, again, let's focus on us and getting back on track. Like, that should be the least of your worries. That's high school shit. You need to stop. And I was just like, oh my God, like, how can I get past this? It just doesn't make any sense. So throughout time, I think the second kind of wake-up call I got was someone that knows him reached out to me and said, hey, I think we need to talk. Like, I know we haven't talked in a while, but it's just something I need to tell you. And, I said, okay, call me. So they called me, and they told me that basically for the past couple of weeks, his son was exposed to a pool at a girl's house, and his dad told his son, oh, Daddy has a secret relationship right now that he doesn't want anyone to know about, that if he keeps his mouth shut and doesn't tell anyone, he'll get a bunch of Rocket League credit. And, he just didn't want anyone knowing. So apparently his son, had, eventually told his mom about the situation, and basically that's how it got back to me. And so basically I was like, oh my gosh. And I asked the person, I said, is it this person's name that I found on Pinterest? And she goes, yeah, it's the same name. And I'm like, oh my God, like, I can't believe this. Like, I think that's when all these bricks just started falling on me, because I'm like, all this time that I was pictured as crazy with him, now the truth is coming out. And I said, who is this person? Like, how are they associated to knowing him? And the person told me, yeah, basically this is the person that he walked in the wedding with, which is the groom's sister that he has known for years. And I remember he told me he was going to walk in the wedding with the groom's sister, but that I should have nothing to worry about because they've known each other for years, and she has a boyfriend, and that's like a little sister to him.
So you're telling the story very calmly, and I mean, how were you? I mean, it's devastating to hear all this when you are, not as a when you. I can't even get my words out. It's devastating to hear all of this kind of stuff, even if you weren't pregnant, and now you are pregnant as well, and your whole entire future that you thought you had is like officially gone. And so how are you feeling in the, like, are you crying a lot? Like, how are you trying to, are you rationalizing kind of what's going on? How are you kind of staying calm? Like, are you reaching out to people? What happened with you in these moments?
In these moments, like, I think the more and more that I reached out to family and told them what was happening, or my friends, and they couldn't believe it. They think of him as like the scum of the earth now, and how he was so good at having a mask on, wanting all these things with me. And it's taken me a lot of time, to even talk calmly about the situation and not let, feelings or emotions get into the way. Because I've just learned to accept, like these types of people. They just will never have any, empathy or any type of feelings or responsibility for what they've done. And that's kind of, how I've taken the situation daily. I try not to think about my ex at all now. And I just feel like the more I do, it'll just harm me in the long run of my recovery.
Yeah, because this is still fresh for you. This happened, I guess, this discard recently, officially. Yeah. So this was like within the quarantine this happened.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. Pretty much like when I found all this out, I did confront him as the last day of our move out in the apartment, and I was crying, and he finally admitted to who this person is, that she's in fact true, that they've been talking, and he didn't want to tell me for how long, but I took it as it must have been for a while, because you guys have all these shared ideas of getting married and stuff, and he's like, no, that's just her way of, wanting us to have a future together, and, I am sorry for everything, but I told you we had a chance at working out if you just would have had the abortion, and, this person actually is a nurse, and we have a lot in common. She lives out in Brandon where my parents do, so just made it seem like it was okay for him to just tell me the cheating that went on. And I told him, I said, that situation that night where you went to go call your parents that I was pregnant, did you in fact go and see her? And he said yes. So he confirmed it right then and there for me. But from that point, I know everything actually came out and leaked out to her family. And basically, she actually reached out to me to apologize, which I thought was weird, telling me, oh, I found out what happened and that your pregnancy was real with your ex, and, I'm so sorry for being the person that didn't know this was going on, and, things between him and I are over with, and I just want you to know I'm so sorry because I dealt with the same type of situation with my daughter. And so her and I just talked for a little bit that night, and he actually the very next day, called my phone left and right, saying he wanted to talk and apologize. And, I didn't know that's what, hovering was at the time. And I gave him the chance to at least tell me, what he needed to tell me, which he was like, I want to go to therapy, and I don't know about us right now, but I still want to be involved, because you've always been there for me, so I want to, keep our relationship. So then, weeks after that, he just completely changed again, and I left it alone at that. But just recently, one of my friends confirmed where he's at, in that area in Brandon Mall, that he was walking around the mall with the new supply and her daughter. So I know he lied to me multiple times afterwards, saying him and her never saw each other again, just like she told me, that things were over between them because of what she found out. So I've left it at that. He's tried contacting me at least 2 to 3 times to ask how the baby's doing, because he claims that he still wants to be involved in some type of way, but I know it's just his new supply telling him that, because of the messages that she used to send me saying, I did tell him he needs to apologize to you for what he's done, but that he still needs to be involved in your baby's life because, it's the right thing to do. And I noticed a lot of his messages lately are, it's the right thing to do, which is why I'm reaching out to you.
So where are you? My voice cracked there. Where are you when it comes to this matter and him being involved with your child when your child is born, and legally what are you allowed to do, and do you want him involved?
And that's such a great question, because that's something that day by day I think of, ultimately, what am I going to do? I know when I first found out the gender, I actually reached out to him to tell him, and he told me he wasn't happy about the situation, but that he appreciates me telling him the gender, and how sick he got at work with anxiety of the situation being real. So I pretty much from that point on have taken it I think it's just going to be mind games in the future. How I'm kind of weighing out my decision right now is I think it's better for him not to be included, period. Just seeing what his son has to go through now, and, I wouldn't want my child going through situations in the future where they're going through, a possible mom figure every couple of years, just like my dad did. And that's something I'm starting to realize, too, with that behaviors. In the long run, I just don't want it affecting my child. I just think as a narcissist, he wouldn't care regardless. He takes his first child as, a pawn between him and his ex, given the situations that he still has feelings for her. But with mine, it's you wanted to discard it, and I'll always feel that feeling in the future. I'm not sure if, my child will be safe around someone that mentally unstable, and they don't want to receive the help that they're supposed to get, to be a better father. So I don't see him being a good father figure at all for our child. I think eventually, when my child's born in September, I would not want him to know either, which is hard. because everyone's like, how dumb is that? Like, you're not going to go after child support. But just looking at the laws and what he can and cannot do, I just don't want to give him that power over me, which, he's done for years. So I just think it's in the best interest not to have him involved.
And when it comes to his ex-wife, have you ever spoken to her?
I have, and we talked a lot about her pregnancy, because she did tell me that, what was factual from her situation in her marriage and what wasn't. And she did confirm that he actually cheated on her multiple times in their relationship and pregnancy. And, eventually she cheated on him because she figured things weren't going to go anywhere. So, the more I came to terms of his pattern, even though he made it seem like, oh my gosh, like I was cheated on, but, what was the real reason? Apparently he's had this same type of narcissistic behavior in the past with her, quitting his job, smoking himself away, and, being lazy and all these other things. So, her and I still have a good relationship. She definitely wants her son to know his sibling when he's born. So I definitely have that open communication with her, which is good. Mm-hmm. I'm glad I still have that part at least. Yeah.
And when it comes to your own healing and dealing with this, have you been in therapy? If you are, when did you start, and what are the things you're dealing with the most?
Yeah, actually, so I started therapy in March, and I've been going every month. And I want to say, my therapist, it's funny, he picked up right from the bat, listen, I think you're dealing with a narcissist, and I really didn't know what that was, and he had to go into terms and, told me to read these books about it, and, he's just telling me, what everyone's told me, that he's just so proud of me for overcoming, all this adversity in such a short amount of time, and, that I don't let anything faze me at this point, because I'm not going to lie, I was crying a lot. I was under severe depression at one point. I started going back to church, just being around more positive figures so that I'm not constantly thinking about the situation, and kind of telling myself the situation is not going to change. Like, it's up to me right now to do what I need to do to be a parent, something that he's not going to do, and, be the best one that I can be in the future. And, with a lot of words, about karma, because I truly believe in it. I just know eventually I'm always pondering to suffer, and he's not. But, I know eventually, he'll get a taste of it from the universe. So, but yeah, I've just been trying to think very positively from things, and just thinking more of what I can and cannot control about the situation.
And before we leave today, do you have any words of advice or wisdom for people that might be going through the same thing?
Yeah, absolutely. For just any listeners that are not in my stage of being with the narcissist, definitely those red flags that you see early on, don't ignore them. If it's come to a point where kind of I am, you just have to let your mind, either create miracles or trigger disasters. And that's kind of like what I've been doing. I just have to keep thinking positive about the situation, be with supportive people that are going to make your life better. Don't contemplate on what could I have done to change, because it's nothing that you did. And the more knowledge that I know about a narcissist in general, they do pick people or target people that will suit them in their best interest until they get bored. To think of it as something that you did right all along, but you don't have to be that burden anymore for, all the harm doing that they're going to be doing in the future. And I have to think of it as, he's with someone new right now that she knows nothing about, or she'll soon realize it. But, just think of it as a big blessing in the skies when they discard you. You may not see it at first, but, it's a great way to keep moving forward in life with what you want to do for yourself. That's the best advice I can give.
And I'm going to add one more thing. And that is, listening to your story, you were in this relationship for 3 years. And even though that you were in it for 3 years, there were these big moments where you had to trust your gut and trust your intuition and go into, check the computer, or you had these pits in your stomach and you followed that. And if you didn't follow those things or follow up on those actual feelings, you might still be in the dark in a lot of ways, and you might not be mentally where you are right now, because sometimes when you're in these situations and you don't have that proof kind of what's going on, it's hard to let things go. And you were able to follow your intuition and get the proof that you needed to move past things. Would you say that's fair?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And it takes time. It's okay to hurt. It's okay to cry. It's okay to question yourself and, just take the situation day by day. Healing is different for everyone. It may take people longer, but just know that there's other people out there, support groups, therapy, that's just very crucial to the time of healing. So.
And last thing before we say goodbye, and what is the gender of your baby?
He's actually, it's a boy.
Okay.
And he's due September 12th.
All right. And do you have any names already picked out?
Yes. I think the perfect name just for, this year with the pandemic and everything that's happened, the situation that I've dealt with is Phoenix. I just wanted something, like Phoenix the bird, just something rising from the ashes and starting all over. I think that's the perfect name for him.
Well, that is beautiful. And I just want to thank you for being on the show with me today and sharing your story. And I appreciate you being here, and I think everyone who's listening appreciates you being here and sharing with us today. So thank you from the bottom of my heart. Montana, I hope you have a great day, and I'll check in with you again as your story here unfolds and see how you are doing with your baby once September comes. And for everyone else out there who is listening, I hope you have a good night.